Hello, friends, and welcome to the Optimized Advisor Podcast, where we focus on optimizing the well-being and best practices of insurance and financial professionals today. On this show, our objective is to help you optimize your life, optimize your profession, and learn from other optimized advisors. I'm your host, Scott Heinela. We hope you enjoy the show. Brian Ott with 525 Advisors. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a beautiful Friday as we head into a wonderful holiday weekend.
Yes.
Memorial. Thank you for coming down from the north. I look forward to diving into you and your practice a little bit.
My pleasure. We found the date and, got some sunshine. It's raining hard when we left up there, so you can't beat that. And it's supposed to be nice when we get back Saturday.
Beautiful. You planned that perfectly.
Perfect. That's right.
Enjoy the beaches and the holiday weekend
down
here.
A couple days at the pool, and we're good to go.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, what's in a name of 525 Advisors?
So, that's an IRS tax publication, believe it or not, publication 525, and it's taxable and non-taxable income. And it's kind of got us thinking when I was putting the business together. My wife actually came up with it because I was saying, one of the biggest advantages of long-term care planning and insurance in general is the tax advantages. And so there's a whole section in that 525 publication about long-term care insurance contracts. And so I wanted long-term care in my name, but, Seattle long-term care, Eastside long-term care, whatever. And so that 525 ended up being just a nice fit. And then we built our website around that, and off we went.
That's very interesting. And what year was that?
2014
Okay.
is really when we registered the name and then really got up and running in 2015.
All right, so let's unpack this first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because we will get to the point of how somebody becomes an elite level long-term care specialist in the country, which is you and 525 Advisors. But before we rush ahead to this, let's go back to where you came from and your kind of professional career. And you and I have talked a little bit about your background in mortgage and marketing and things of that nature. So just share with us that history.
Yeah, well, first off, so I am a marketing major. Went to school originally for construction management and then flipped over. One of the books I had listed out in there was Zig Ziglar. I read his book, Secrets of Closing the Sale, which just changed my life, and I decided to switch over to business school. So I became a marketing major with a finance concentration. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then I stumbled into the mortgage business. And that was 93 in Chicago, and I spent 2 years in the mortgage business, and then Chicago just kind of ate me up, and I said, I got to get out of there. I'm a Colorado boy, grew up in the mountains. So I moved out to Seattle, had a friend out there. I thought I'm going to spend a year or two here. And pretty soon it was 4, 5. Then I met my wife, and her whole family's there.
And now you got roots.
You got roots. And so I started my own mortgage brokerage in 1997 and put some of my marketing skills to work. And we built that business and ran it really until, it ran great until 2008, 2009, obviously, when the crash hit.
Yeah, the world changed.
But prior to that, in 2006, my father had been killed in an accident. And it changed everything in our life. He was just 60, my mom was 60, and I thought, wow, we need to start looking into things. So I called my insurance guy and said, I'm looking at some long-term care insurance for my mom. And just great guy, just a real good long-term care or life insurance guy. And he says, well, I do a little bit of long-term care, but these are the different companies you want to look at. And before I called him, I actually had just gone out because I knew him as my life guy. I didn't know him as long-term care. And I'd gone out and started just getting, information. And I'm basically getting quotes, running into salespeople.
Yeah.
And so I got so frustrated. That's when I called him. He said, oh, no, I can help you. And he goes, you should go back in and what are you doing? And I explained. He goes, go get your license. I can help you get on the inside. So that was kind of my motivating factor, was to get on the inside, help my mom get a plan.
What was the time frame for this?
This was in 2006 when my father was killed.
Okay.
So I went back in 2007. We were kind of looking at long-term care options, but it was really 2008, 2009, that crash in the mortgage business just really put the gas on the right. Okay, I'm going to go get a license now in insurance because I may have to have another career.
Right.
So I did that, and I went and I got licensed and joined a Mass Mutual, joined, big mutual company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And And those guys are
Great training.
great training,
Yeah,
stalwarts, right? And my agent was from Northwestern. He's a guy that helped me with my buy-sell agreements and all those things for the business. So I knew him and I trusted him. He said, "No, Mass has got a great product and they got a great program." So I did that. And then, I struggled. I'll admit it. I struggled. You're in there, and we spend so much time in the training room, and you're going over things like elevator speech, and list out the 200 people that you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And here's your card system, and all those things that they had set in stone. And part of my internal philosophy has always been to look at what everybody else is doing and then think a little bit differently, because everybody else is, you're doing what you know because someone taught you that.
Right.
And someone taught them that, and it turns out to be the same thing. So I was really questioning in there in that mutual environment. And then I got called back just kind of out of the blue from a friend of mine that said, "Hey, we could use you over here." I still had my mortgage license. I had my financial services license at this point, insurance license. So I licensed all the way around, and they said, "We could use you back at this mortgage place." And it was a guy that did a ton of radio advertising. And so he, invites me in, talk to him. I was like, "Yeah, I know this. And I'm
Back
like,
at the mortgage
yeah,
space.
they're great." So this was 13, 14.
Okay.
And it was just a refinance boom is what it was. After 08, 09, the mortgage market was just dead for a long time.
Right.
All the specialty loans were gone. The subprime blew up.
Yeah, of course.
Alt-A, no income blew up.
Right.
So we're
it's
back
all
to
retooled now.
all
and things
retooled
like
back
that.
to Fannie Freddie. Everybody has the exact same thing. Everybody's selling a Chevy at this point. But rates had dropped, and so this guy had so much pull coming in with leads, he couldn't handle them. So I went in and I shot fish in a barrel for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that whole time I was watching him and watching his marketing and learning from him, because in this back of my mind, I want to be in the insurance world. I really do. That's part of the financial services I want to have because I believe in it. My father had a whole life policy when he passed away. It saved my mom's. It did just what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was supposed to do.
And mortgage is so volatile, right?
Always. And honestly, my journey in the mortgage business was a refinance journey. If you go back to 93 and you look at what that 10-year treasury and the 30-year treasury's done, it's just been a downward slide.
Yeah.
And so we were always refinancing. We had a little bit of flat spot, and then it was refinance. Well, refinance debt consolidation, that's different than purchase money. So it was very volatile based on interest rates. And but there's a lot of similarities in what I do and what I did. The replace credit with health. There's still some underwriting aspects to it.
Yep.
But I learned a lot from this guy, and then decided that I'm going to get into the insurance world, but I'm going to be a specialist. I'm going to be just one thing. I'm not going to do, that's what, the big mutual companies teach you. You can do everything, right? I can help your child with college savings. I can roll over your 401k to an IRA. I can sell you some life insurance. I can sell you some whole life, some term. I can get disability. You can do it all.
Right. Business insurance and
everything.
All these things. I'm the jack of all trades.
That's right. And I'm sitting there in this training program looking at this going, there is, you've got to know so much to be really good at this. And we're spending our time on elevator speeches. And writing down people's names that write down every person and then go call them up and talk to them. I thought there's got to be a better way.
Right. I want to master something.
Yes. And so another gentleman that I knew that was in the financial services industry, I talked to him. I said, I think I'm going to start a business. I'm going to focus on long-term care insurance. He said, I don't think you can do that. I said, why? And he goes, it's just you need to sell other products.
Nobody buys that.
Yeah, there's not enough business out there. I was like, no. I think you're wrong. I said, I think we just need to educate people about it. I said, I think it's very important. I think if you statistically read, like I did, read about people that have long-term care insurance, there's almost no lapse rate. Once you get a policy, they hang on to those because they see the value of it. Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, another thing that really triggered me in this generation was in 2010, my grandmother triggered her long-term care insurance and moved into an assisted living facility. So this was along that same journey between my father dying and me starting my own company. And I realized at that point how important it is because my mom got her life back.
Yeah.
That's really what it boiled down. My mom, they're 20 years apart. And my mom was, I called them frickin' frack because they were funny. Same hairstyles and same, saddlebag little purses. And my mom was taking care of her mom. And my mom just said, I can't do it anymore. So when we turned on that long-term care policy for my grandma, my mother flew from Colorado out to Seattle and spent like 3 weeks with us. And what was so powerful about that, it was in the summer. My son was just turned 7, so she was there for his birthday. My daughter was 5. And my mom was out reading a book one beautiful summer up in Seattle, and she had not been away from her home in over 3 years unless she was at her mom's taking care of her. So she got her life back. And so I looked at it from that lens and said, we need to educate people what it is, because I think the insurance industry's done their own disservice, and the financial advisors do their own disservice when they make it a money issue. Oh, you have enough money, you don't need to worry about long-term care planning. So I kind of put all that together, and that's how I decided I'm going to market, I'm going to educate first and figure out a way to do that, because you can't go sell a product to somebody that doesn't understand what the product is or what it does.
Right.
It just makes it very difficult. And I think you're also doing a disservice, because if they don't understand their options or what it is, those are the people that end up down the road. Oh, well, the policy didn't pay. It's, well, you got a facility-only policy. Did you know that?
And from the education side, just before all that, people don't understand what long-term care truly looks like in this country until you start to bring light to just logical occurrences. The example of your mom and her mom, and, physics, husband and wife. If I've got a 220-pound husband and I'm 110 pounds, how am I going to physically support my husband from a transferring standpoint? Just little basic things like that even. I mean, I'm getting very granular, but it's like we got to connect some of these dots here, and the misconception that everything is in a nursing home, which so far from the truth.
Yes, absolutely. 3 out of 4 people start basically in their own home. And so when my father was killed, he broke his neck. And if he would have lived through that, he would have been paralyzed. The doctor said probably from the shoulders down, the neck down. My father was 6'1", 200 pounds. He was a logger, big, gruff guy. My mom has got scoliosis. She's barely 5 feet tall right now and maybe 120 pounds. She would not be helping my father get in and out of that bed, in and out of the wheelchair, in and out of the bathtub. She couldn't do it.
Right.
And so I looked at that and I thought, we dodged a bullet on that. You don't want to see a loved one pass, but at the same sense, I think there's things worse than death in many cases. And that would have been one of them. And so, people, the analogy I use, Scott, too, and I think a lot of people, if you have clients and you're talking about long-term care insurance, the analogy I use is a real-life story. Our house burned down. My mom was at potluck dinner with the church, and she left my dad alone with myself and my older brother. I was 10. And so my older brother would have been 12. And then we had a young brother he's like 5 months old. Curtis was just a kid, baby. And we're watching BJ and the Bear or Dukes of Hazzard or something, the cable television. Yeah. We had an antenna on top of the house. Yeah, and the antenna burned out. And the wire that ran the signal down to the TV. And the house just kept getting hotter and hotter. And we're sitting in there. And my dad said, run upstairs and check that wood stove. And my brother and I were fighting. No, we'll do a next commercial. And finally the TV just burns out and goes to snow. And my dad just pikes up off the couch. He's just full sweat. And while our house was on fire upstairs. So our house burns down, and I tell people all the time that the insurance company, like my mom said, and my mom, who's the first person you call? She said, well, I called my mom, and second guessing who I married at that point, because she left dad home with 3 boys and we burned the house down. That was her take on it. But she said, she called the insurance company, and I said, what'd they do? And she goes, they took care of everything. They found us a place to stay. And think of that. If your house burns down, the insurance company doesn't drive by and drop off a sack full of money and say, thanks for being a client, and leave. I mean, if they did, you'd still have a lot of problems. What do you do with the old structure? How do you get rid of burn appliances? How do you get permits? Do I need a new permit for the septic system, or does that come with the building one? How do I get a contractor? How do I know that contractor is not ripping me off? So you have all those things. Well, that's what long-term care situations are. This COVID, we turned on a claim for a client of ours. It was just a disaster. Peter passed away. His wife Lois had kidney cancer. She was now stuck in her house. Nobody could go in and see her because she'd been exposed. This was a year ago, March. Disaster. So we called the insurance company. We got the concierge service turned on. We went to work and we found her help. And their kids called us the next day crying, saying, thank you. I can't believe that, A, my dad did this, had the plan, but B, that you guys were able to help us with this because we've been working on this for 2 days. So those complex situations, people don't realize how complex they are and how quickly it can become complex.
Yeah.
And the decisions that you have to make. And so that's that education point. You got to go back and educate people. What are we really talking about here? It's not, do I have enough money to pay for care or not? It's just not that simple.
Right.
It's having a plan.
Yeah. It's not that at all. And, that's the thing that becomes an interesting conversation of just going back to the one example of, well, we have plenty of assets. Okay. Well, what's all the unintended consequences and the conversations of real life that ensue, to your point, that really don't have anything to do with finances? But we get so caught up in investment return and managing portfolios and, maximizing growth for clients.
Right.
But yet we fail to really, really take priority of preservation, peace of mind, what that really means. I mean, let me ask you this question. Have you ever had a loved one, either the community spouse or the adult children, say, I'm so upset that mom or dad owned one of these policies.
Yeah.
Damn you.
Yeah, exactly.
Has that ever occurred?
Exactly.
I mean,
Never.
It's a blessing.
It's an absolute blessing. And I think, as I learn, and I'm still learning, believe me, every day is a learning event for me. I just believe that you have to continue to learn. And one of the things that I figured out not too long ago is that part of that discussion, whether it's life insurance or long-term care insurance or disability insurance, you're kind of betting against yourself, right? That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, if I get this long-term care insurance, and I'm betting
It's not the most riveting topic.
Yeah, I'm healthy. Why would I need that? And then you get it. It's kind of like when back in the refinance business, we used to take people, back in the day, you had your banks, and then you had the strip mall finance companies like the Household Finance, Avco, Beneficial, you'd see that finance a refrigerator, a TV at the local store, and they'd do mortgages for people that had really bad credit because there was no subprime market at that point. Well, our initial, like in the 90s when I started out, we would buy these lists and we would help people refinance from those finance companies into the first true subprime loans, which were maybe go to 80% of the value of the house, but we could pay off some credit card debt, bring them from 14% down to maybe 7.99 for 2 years.
Right.
But what happened with those people is we never got a lot of referrals. And somebody was asking me, because there's all these coaches, the referral stumps in businesses all over, right?
Yeah.
How to get referrals out of people.
Yeah.
Well, people don't like talking about the fact that I just paid off my Harley and my wife's Nordstrom card and consolidated and paid her, right? They don't want people to know that. And long-term care is kind of funny that way too. It's like I'll hear clients and they'll say, yeah, we were at a dinner party and we told our friends about this great, asset-based long-term care plan you help us with. And like, well, why'd you do that? I mean, I thought you guys have plenty of money. Why did you do that? So
yeah,
that's still the feedback.
Yeah, and then it's like, how does the consumer become eloquently equipped to reiterate why they did X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task.
It's not. It's so, and again, but that's just life, right? We are all faced with these decisions. Why do we save? Why do we invest? Why do we go to church? Why do we do anything? It gives us some comfort.
Yeah.
It gives us some value outside of just the monetary value. There's
Yeah.
some other value there. And I think
It can't be just all about that we made it rich on Amazon stock or what have you.
Yeah.
The other part of this is one of our advisors, a good friend of mine, the insurance and long-term care planning, he says is like eating your vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's all right.
it's one of the most important things from a nutritional standpoint we know we need to do. But no, it's not. It's not as fun as eating a slice of pizza or a cheeseburger.
Yeah. And I that's a good analogy too. And I think that when you look at, a lot of it out there, if you listen to some of the shows on the radio, some of these financial advisors now, just the kind of the drum now is just get your money in the market. Just get your money in the market, indexed funds, whatever it is, lowest fees. And everybody's talking about this. But they also talk about diversity inside investing. And because of the interest rate environment as low as it is, it's really made it hard for us to have money in bonds or anywhere else or savings accounts. And so it's forcing more people into that market.
Yeah.
And the problem is the market is volatile. And we know one of the big carriers out there is coming out with a variable long-term care product, which is, to me, on the surface, it's going to be easy to sell from the financial advisor point of view. But at the end game, for me, why do we have insurance? It's the
Right.
guarantee.
Yeah.
We don't want a maybe. We don't want it tied to the market crashing and you don't get as much as we thought you were going to get. And so again, that's part of that education process. Why do we even look at insurance in general? A lot of people are surprised in Washington State, you can insure your car. You just put money in a CD and let the state know, and you put their name on that, and you can sit there and self-insure your vehicle. Nobody does it. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, what if you hit a busload of attorneys? That CD's not going to go very far, right?
Right.
And the same with your house. You pay your house off. You don't have to have homeowner's insurance. But why do you do it? Most people do. I mean, wealthy people have their homes insured. It's because it's that guarantee and it's a dedicated source of funds. So again, we have this, just what you had touched on, there's this dynamic out there about what are we doing with our money? Well, if I put it into this bucket over here, well, then it's not going to grow as fast as this bucket over here. And so everything should be in the growth bucket. Well, then the problem with that growth bucket is that there's risk and there's volatility. And then when we go into these crashes or like 08, 09, then everybody's like, I knew it. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have bought that house. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And that's that. There's no peace of mind there, just what you touched on.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so psychological and just human behavior and understanding that, but also as an advisor, whether I'm focusing in any specific segment, part of our process is really being a coach and psychologist and understanding behavior and helping clients recognize those behaviors and doing what's right and doing what's most important and being holistic in our approach. And without question, we talk about this. It's one of the largest unfunded risks and exposures to a retiree today, period. Yeah. So I want to step back or reposition a little bit and talk a little bit more and focus on marketing. Sure. You recognize that in the mortgage business, your background was certainly, or I'd say you learned a lot in the mortgage business through advertising on the radio. And when you switch from A to B, being long-term care and really being in that niche, you recognized I could take those ingredients and I think I can do something here. Mm-hmm. So what did that look like?
Well, it's fascinating because in the mortgage business, we had great success doing direct mail. So we would buy these lists and send out letters. And I remember the Money Store and First Plus Financial and all those guys. It was Dan Marino. You could not drive to work without hearing 5 of their ads on the radio, right? Back in the day, borrow 125%. Well, what that was doing was stirring the soup, right? So then we would send a letter and we were local and people would read that. Oh, yeah, I can refinance and do whatever. So then I got to the point and started looking at it saying, the game has changed. Direct mail is dead. Email leads are dead. How do you get in front of people? And the gentleman that I learned from in the mortgage business, he just marketed on the radio with some ads. Well, the problem is, how do you sum up all the things that we're talking about in a 60-second ad on the radio? You just can't. It's not going to mean anything to anybody. Mm-hmm. So I knew I wanted to do that, and I ran into another gentleman that was doing these recorded shows and podcasts, and I actually was doing so. I took that leap of faith, and I bought time on a radio station and went in and did live shows, and did that for about 3 months, and then I got very.
This was 14, 15 maybe.
Yeah, 15.
15, yeah.
I got very lucky. There's a big financial advisor, Rick Edelman, a syndicated show all across the country, and he was on one of the big station out there in Seattle on Cairo, and he left that market, and that station was completely booked. You could not buy time on that station, and then he left, and the manager called me. I had only been on the show on this sister station for 3 months, just still getting my feet wet, and he called and said, "Hey, we've heard your show. We have an offering and would like to offer this spot to you." And the guy that was helping me put it all together was like, that's an honor. You should take that. But it was a big spend, and so here we are trying to get this business up going.
Bitch, am I going to do this?
The timing wasn't right, but it never is. When's the right time to have kids? When's the right time to do anything, right? We're always thinking that. So the timing wasn't right. So I said, okay, I'm going to, how much do I believe in this? How much do I believe in myself? How much do I believe in the business? And I swallowed hard and said, yes, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit where you said, you know what? I really believe in this, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going after this.
And I had some support from the wife as well, because I just told her, I said, honey, this very well could go bad, and we could very well end up having to sell the house and be bankrupt and, live with your parents or my parents or whatever. And I said that'd be the worst case scenario. So we have to, are you okay with that? We had 2 young kids.
But your gut was telling you?
Yeah, my gut was telling me that wasn't going to happen. But I said, if you can look at the worst case scenario and say, we'd still have it better off. I have a little house in Colorado. I could move to that and live there. And I said, we would still have it better off than a lot of people. It's the ladder of life. I say you can spend your time looking up, or every once in a while you need to look down a few rungs and see where you're at. I said, if you can accept that, the worst case scenario, then it empowers you to move forward. And she said, no, I'm fine with that, honey, go for it. So I did, and I leveraged it up, and I did leverage. I mean, it takes a while to build that audience, but it started paying off. We started trickling it in, and it was a great way for me to get in and talk about things, do what we're doing today, talk about issues, talk about what long-term care is, how it works, what it pays for, what it really means when you go into a care situation. Because how do you talk about long-term care for an hour every week?
Yeah.
That was the other thing I was struggling with.
Right.
But there's endless amounts of stuff to talk about once
really
you realize.
is. Yeah. Once you start to unpack it and become an expert in the field, and there's so many dimensions to it. And,
So that was the driving force that got us up and really got us going. And all of a sudden,
you were doing a weekly show. Was it weekly?
Weekly live.
Okay.
Yes.
Weekly
Yes.
live and regular advertising.
Regular advertising. And then what I found is really what I needed to do is having you call me for long-term care quote isn't what we were doing. What we were driving people to come to one of our classes, come and learn, spend some time with me, get educated on it, and we'd spend an hour in that class just going through everything. And I did a tremendous amount of studying on PowerPoints. I remember reading this book, Why Most PowerPoints Suck.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying, death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is so true.
And I'd looked at my first PowerPoint. I'm like, okay, I'm doing 9 out of 10 things this guy says not to do, right?
Exactly.
The me page, gone.
I'm
Just the
staring
bullets,
at it.
gone. I'm reading it, gone. So did a lot of work and just got a real simplified class and got more engaged with the people in those classes, and created a book that we gave to people. So when they come into our class, you can't buy my book, but I'm going to give it to you for getting in your car and driving. So that's really the formula that we put to work. And
Hammered it.
But
or just disciplined to it, and stuck to
that's
your guns.
life, right? It's like when you and Nick were talking about, consistency and working out, you have to do it. And that's the same with your job. You just have to be consistent. So we stuck to our guns. We did that radio show. We just kept doing it. We kept doing it. And then year, 2 years later, I can't even remember the time frame, somebody else contacted us and said, we have an opening in another station. Would you guys like to do this? It's a whole different market. You look at the radio listeners as a pool of people. I'm going to dip in this pool over here. Well, this station over here, this one's conservative talk. Well, the liberals in Seattle aren't listening to the conservative talk. And so you can go over to this one that has maybe a different audience. And so we did that, and we're still figuring that out and growing. And then, of course, COVID came. Which changed our live class and our live
Yeah, you can no longer do live classes.
Can't do live classes. In fact, I just came back from.
So here we are. We just misshifted here.
Yeah.
We can't find a gear.
And you're going downhill fast, right? It's like I had classes.
Got to figure out how to get this thing back on track.
Yeah, classes scheduled for March, and then they said, nope, you can't do them. And it was March 15th. I had like a week, and I had to learn how to do, a webinar really quick. And we did. We pulled it off. So.
And so what happened there? I mean, I'm sure there's a retool time, right? It's just nuances to any marketing platform of.
So March of 2020 by far started off our worst quarter that we ever had in the last 3 years. We've been growing like this.
Yeah. Well, in the first quarter, I mean, December, January, February, things were going so well.
Just great.
And March, April.
And then boom. And a lot of it, too, is the stock market crash.
Yeah.
Remember, because stock market goes down 30%, and all of a sudden we deal a lot of asset-based long-term care planning. Well, I'm not so comfortable about stroking that check for $100,000 right now.
100%.
I just lost 30% of my market. And then you throw COVID on top of that. So again, it gets you back down to your gut. You're going home, you're saying, did I make a mistake? What did I do wrong? There's all these things I can't control. How am I going to do this? And the retooling was, all right, I'm going to learn how to do webinars. I'm going to learn how to stand there and do what I do in webinars. One of the most powerful parts of our class, by far, the reason why I like the class, everybody says, it's a lot of work getting, 30 people in a room. And that's really where we were averaging 30 to 35. And we started off maybe getting 5 or 6. It was hard getting people in the seats.
But we do it. We're starting. We're committing. We're disciplined in this.
And you learn everything. And my case manager, Madeline, would be at every class. And at the end, when she left, I gave her, carte blanche. I said, Just tell me, honest opinion. What went right? What went wrong? And she'll say, I think you lost them here. Da da da. I said, I saw some people kind of seem like they're rolling their eyes at this. She goes, yeah, I don't think they understood that part. Maybe you could simplify this. And so we did that. And we just kept improving that process. And then I read, and just always reading books too, and parts and bits and pieces, and learning from other presenters. And one of the things, when someone asks a question, walking back into that room and standing there, and maybe putting your hand on the shoulder and repeating that question for everybody else up front. Scott wants to know about blah, blah, blah. And so little things like that. And so we've also got up to like 30, 35. We'd have a full class. That's all we could have we have this big training room down in our building. That's all we could use. But we just dialed in, and all of a sudden that just was taken away from us. And so then we had to learn all those nuances. How do I do that? The questions were the best part of that class. I would go through the material, and then you'd ask a question. Well, then Danielle would hear you ask that question, and she'd say, raise her hand. Well, yeah, I had that question. Then somebody else would ask another question.
Right.
And it really, that's the favorite part of the class, because you get people laughing. And then maybe somebody would share a story like, well, you know what? My mom was diagnosed with dementia, and that's why I'm here, and it was horrible. And that is just...
That's the power.
It was so powerful.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. Yeah. And I had
and that's because I think it's so powerful mainly because it is real. It is raw.
Yeah.
It is front and center, and it's not the numbers. It's not the stats. It's none of that.
It's not. It's the stories. It's the storytelling in the process. And so when you can get somebody off the street to come in and sit in your class, and then to open up and share something personal with those other 30 strangers, it's so powerful.
So then in a virtual world, how do you...
It's
how do you
right, two sides to every coin. So now all of a sudden that's gone. Well, now the virtual side, what it's done is we've gone from maybe 30 people in a class to 100 people on a webinar. So that's pretty powerful.
Good thing.
Yeah. I'm not getting in my car and driving. I've taken out all these obstacles to get to that class.
Yeah.
I can do them more frequently. But you lose a lot of that.
Right.
You lose a lot of that personal interaction. And I'm staring at a pinhole camera on the computer.
Right.
I'm not looking at eyeballs.
So if there's a physical environment, when you get 30 people in a class, what kind of numbers would you be getting in terms of follow-up of saying, yes, I need to meet? Is it half?
Easily.
Is it more?
Easily.
So 60, 70?
Yeah, two out of three would fill out a contact form, and then we would rifle through.
So
and
two-thirds, yeah.
Yeah, two-thirds of them would fill out contact forms, and a good, half of those aren't going to qualify. That's the reality of long-term care planning.
Right.
Right. So it's like, even though you try to educate, people will show up with their walker, or they show, it's just too late. But you don't throw them out, you educate them.
Right.
And you hope that other people will learn and see. But yeah, so we would get that process going. And the thing about, and I know a lot of advisors out there, if you're used to working face-to-face, the power of that, what 90% of that meeting is not the numbers. It's not the stats. It's them looking you in the eye and sizing you up and deciding, I like this person's character. I want to work with them. I trust them. And that class would do that. It would let them see.
It already
us interact.
plants the trust seed,
That's
the knowledge seed. You're an expert.
I can't remember which book I read it in, but they were saying the thing about life classes. A third of the people that are going to show up there probably already love you. These are the people from listening to the radio show. A third of the people are never going to like you no matter what you do. Your job is to bring that other third over to your side to like you. So that's where we say the 2 out of 3. And it's true. It pretty statistically plays out. 2 out of 3 people have filled those contact forms, and the other third never will.
So now you're 6 years into this, right? You're getting 100 people in these classes. When was the last time that you did an in-person class?
February of 2020. So I did my class, and then I was out at a carrier visit. I came back and was getting ready for my March 2020 classes. I had 2. We would do them back to back. Done. It was right up to the limit too, because the building manager said, "No, you can still do them. I think we'll let you know." And then that last week, we had literally a week to learn how to do a webinar.
Amazing.
And we did it. We pulled it off. And
so now, out of 100 attendees in a virtual environment, what do the numbers then look like now? It's got to be. It's certainly percentage-wise massively lower.
Yeah, maybe 40%.
Yeah,
50 on a good 50 on
though.
a good day, but 40 might fill out contact forms, and then you got to weed through those people.
And nothing's now in person, really. I mean, to this point.
So
even the sales process and education process is being conducted virtually.
Yes.
Huge pivot.
But also, again, it's just a lesson I learned in Sunday school. There's good and bad to every side. It's two sides of the coin, right? So I look at this and I say, gosh, the upside is look how many more people I'm getting to educate.
Mm-hmm.
Downside is it's a little harder maybe to cultivate those people and turn them into clients.
Mm-hmm.
But if the numbers continue to grow and we're doing more business now than we did last year in live, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for everybody. It's like we're helping more people, and that's the way I look at it. I think of the person that sold my grandmother a policy, which I know he did. She lived in a very small town in the mountains of Colorado, and he knocked on her door. He or she, I don't even know. That person's long gone. I think what a blessing that guy ran into my grandmother.
Yeah.
Because it helped her get the care she deserved. It helped my mom get her life back. It helped me get my mom back in my life. It helped my kids get their grandma back in their life. So Madeline and I always talk about this, that, because her mom was on the Medicaid system. Madeline dropped out of high school to take care of her mom. Her mom was horrible health in 50s and ended up dying in a Medicaid system. She worked at Microsoft. So she comes at it from the other side. What happens if you're not prepared and you don't have a plan? So we look at that as how many people we can help and how many generations are we helping. And so, yes, the virtual world is somewhat uncomfortable for me, but at the same sense, if I can help more people and that multiplier effect goes out, how great is that?
Yeah.
That's pretty.
In theory, right, we're no longer confined to my local geographic area.
Mm-hmm.
I can potentially scale to specific markets anywhere I want.
We've got clients California, Colorado, Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Carolina's going right now. I mean, and they're finding us through the podcast, and they can go to the webinar. They can do that. So that's pretty great.
So today we talked about, your numbers are back where they were. You're up and running. I mean, it's all systems go. It's everything you can handle. That's a wonderful blessing and a great place to be. How much of where you're at now is attributed to, you think, the 5-6 year commitment to your brand has attributes to where you're doing it today, as opposed to, okay, I'm in this space. I want to do this, and I'm going to go in, and it takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Yes, it does. And the barrier to entry is high because you have to be willing to put yourself in a very uncomfortable situation. We all hate our voice, right? Everybody hates their voice. And so
it's rare that I'll go back and listen.
I know, you sound like such a dweeb, right? And I remember I was having these guys. I had Michael Medved, actually, a national syndicated guy, read some ads for me because he had long-term care and he believed he heard me. He's like, "Oh, I'll read some ads for you." Mm-hmm. It's great. So Michael Medved, I got these guys, and finally like, "Brian, you need to come in and do it." I was like, "Oh, I can't do that." "Yeah, you need to come in and do it." I can't do that. So finally I went in there and I did one, I did a cut, and then pretty soon, next thing you know, I got a radio show, and then you're standing up. I mean, who likes standing up in front of a room full of people?
Right.
99% of the people would say, I'd rather have a tooth pulled.
Yes.
Right? You don't want that public speaking. So what I do, you can't let fear drive you. And truthfully, I was like, everybody had to take at Colorado State University, you had to take public speaking. So everybody waited till their junior, senior year. So it was usually full senior, right? Just dragging it out.
Nerve-wracking.
So I said, I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off, and I signed up my freshman year.
Good for you.
And took it. Got a C-.
Hey, you passed.
But I'm just saying that the commitment.
You know what though about that? Everybody starts from somewhere.
Yeah.
If you really want to be dedicated to something and learn a craft, speaking and public speaking is no different. It's figure it out, practice it, learn it. There's a process. There's a behavior.
Lots to read, absolutely, and those are the kind of books that I read. And and you can go all the way back. I grew up in a very small town on a dirt road. My dad was a logger. You didn't call somebody to come hang your Christmas lights. You didn't call somebody to come fix your hot water heater. You went down to the hardware store and you bought a thermocoupler and you figured it out. So that mindset has also taken me on these challenges saying, okay, I'm not good at public speaking. I'm not good at podcasts. I'm not good at any of this, but we have this internet. We have so much information out there. You can watch YouTube videos. You can learn, watch TED Talks, learn how to be more succinct, whatever it is. And so the process, yes, it's continuing to learn, and we're still figuring it out. We just hired a new employee. And I brought her in and I said, I'm going to be honest with you. We're kind of making this position up as we go because we don't know how this is going to play, but this is where we need help.
Yeah.
And just being able to admit that to yourself that you don't know everything and you don't have all the answers, but Mistakes are okay if you learn from them, especially they're valuable if you learn from them.
Yeah. Very much so.
And so that's what we do, and we've just continued, and we're still learning. So this whole new COVID world, we are still learning. How do we really? Is it good to do the face-to-face on the webinars? Right now, I'm having success just on the phone calls, so there's not a distraction, because that's the other thing that you're struggling with now. When you have somebody on a webinar, what are they doing? Are they watching it on their smartphone? Are they babysitting their grandson? Is their dog barking in the background? You don't know. You remove that from the class.
Because they're just listening, right? And you're not in a viewing mode.
That's right.
They're viewing you. So you have no access to them. Are you doing any polling or questioning or engagement to the audience during your live webinars? And they are live, right?
They are live, yes. And so what will happen is Madeline, my case manager, will sit there as an administrator on our software that we use. And I will just tell anybody that wants to do it, it's Webinar Jam is what I use, because it doesn't have an executable from the client's point of view. So they just click on a link and they're good to go. They don't have to download any software. So it's really nice. But they can send questions in. And so the protocol for me is I'm going to go through the webinar, and then I'm going to stick around as long as I need to answer questions, same as my class. And I let Madeline will, shoot things back. Like if someone says, hey, can I get a copy of the book? Or that, she'll just take those live while she's doing it and then save up those other questions and let them know that, I'm going to answer those at the end. And then I can pull up and I have a screen and I can just read through those questions.
And are you getting a bunch of questions and engagement?
Oh, yeah. Well,
absolutely.
Wow. Absolutely. So,
wow, that's great.
But it's also interesting, too.
So it really has replicated the
live
real
class
experience, the live class.
Yes. Yeah. And the funny thing is, I went in and just, that first question, even in the live class, everybody's looking around and nobody wants to raise their hand because you don't want to sound stupid. I get that.
Yeah.
So once somebody asks a question, and so I used to play this game. I was like, I got a scratch ticket right here for the first question. And it's like, whoop, someone get their hand up.
Just a little motivator.
Get them going. And so on the live classes, we learned that. On the webinar, it's like, what do we need questions? And it's like the first one I did, I think we had 17 people on it, And I was like, gads. I'm looking over, no questions. I'm looking at just blank.
Crickets.
I'm like, okay. So Scott from Bellevue wants to know about what happens if the insurance company goes, I just start making up questions.
Right.
Just good. Rally them. And then pretty soon I started getting a couple coming in.
Right, okay. You had to warm them up.
I had to warm them up.
That's great.
So it's kind of
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's good. See, those are the little just tricks you've got to learn along the way and pivot.
Yes. You have to pivot. And there's been, I worked with this attorney that taught live classes on estate planning, which was really great. And he just couldn't make the pivot. And he's had a radio show for almost 20 years. He's off the air now. He could not pivot to the webinars. He could not make that change in his practice. And it's hard. I get it. And it just stinks because we tend to do what we know, and we like that consistency and we like that comfort. And when something gets wiggled out of place, it stinks because now you're like, gosh, I just had this up and running. We had our system in place and now it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So do you quit or do you go back and retool? And you have to retool.
You got to retool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And COVID required so much of that in every aspect of our life.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's helping people too, because if you're used to meeting with people, and now, you can do a Zoom meeting, you can do whatever you want, but just picking up the phone and talking to them, I think people are getting more comfortable with that. So I know some of the financial advisors I work with have clients all over the country, and they've been doing the phone for years, and they've been very good at it.
So from a product standpoint, what you're seeing as the expert here and just the volume of people you're engaging with, it's mostly, you mentioned asset-based long-term care, and what about traditional long-term care, or just other options? What are we seeing in the landscape from your perspective?
Traditional's tough. It's getting beaten up. Mass Mutual just got out last year. Transamerica just got out this year. We're basically
how many options do we have today? Half a dozen?
A couple, to be honest with you, because if you look at
they're compressed by states too, right?
That's right. And you look at the captive agents, the Northwestern, the Bankers Life, those guys that sell direct only. So you don't, as an independent, you don't have access to those. And I think with the interest rate environment as low as it is, it's really putting the pressure on that traditional market. Mm-hmm. The asset-based side of it is under some pressure too from the low interest rates. We've seen some changes there. We've seen some repricing over the last couple of years from just about everybody. but that is still the big 900-pound grill in the room for long-term care planning is the asset-based hybrid.
Yeah. Would you say maybe 9 out of 10 sales are going to be some asset care?
Yes.
Some asset-based version. So there's some traditional LTC going
There's still
on.
a place for it,
Yeah,
right? And there's still a place for it, especially the state partnership program, which we still have, which is still very viable. And so we're going to find those places. And right now we're doing a little bit more of that this year because those are the people with maybe smaller estates. Maybe they have a couple $100,000 in the IRA and that's it. But I think the industry as a whole, where it's going, I'm just going to be honest with you. I think if I'm looking out 10 years down the road, already we're seeing long-term care is not – you're not going to have success marketing it to the people that are told they need it, right? And so meaning the poor people are going to go on Medicaid. The rich people have all the money they need. It's the middle class. Well, those are the people where, $500-$600 a month is real money.
Yeah.
And it's hard to swallow that pill and write that check for a traditional plan. And where the industry has really missed it is these asset-based plans, the people that have money, for whatever reason, they didn't think they wanted insurance. Mm-hmm. And that's where we've had the most success by far. I mean by far, you see the numbers,
Yep.
It's the people, the vast majority of my clients could technically self-insure. I would bet you that 95% of the clients that I help, if they walked in their financial advisor, they tell them they could self-insure.
Right.
So those financial advisors are missing that opportunity because they don't believe in long-term care planning, but their clients want that.
Yeah.
They believe in it. They've watched a loved one go through it.
It's the simplest thing I try to explain to people. I say, look, let me get this. Let me just break this down as simple as possible. True wealth is created by taking currency, capital, and being able to turn 2 pennies into 4, 4 into 8, and long-term care insurance instantly does that.
Yes.
If I can just portray that, if we really want to dive into first and foremost the kind of the finances of it all, that's what this is doing. But we've already uncovered the fact that the bigger reason why you're doing this has nothing to do with that. But even the financial aspect of it makes wonderful sense.
Yeah. Well, and what bothers me, I have another colleague that I work with, and we talk on a regular basis. And one of the things I was pointing out to him, because he was asking me about the asset-based plans and why these people are buying this and people that have this money. And I said, look, where people miss this is just, you had touched on this earlier about the numbers and the statistics, and we love that software that we can put in all the numbers, and you're going to be good till 93 and a half, and you can spend 4.7% of your portfolio down and whatever else, and then we give them a nice little spreadsheet and give it out to them. We like things like that. Very succinct, and it feels like we're doing something. Mm-hmm. But when it really comes down to it, why people do something, why we buy anything, why we spend money is not because of the statistics, it's the emotional side. Mm. If somebody wants a Cadillac Escalade and you walk them out there to the lot and you say, look, Escalades are nice, but underneath all of that is a Suburban. And so you can get this fully loaded Suburban and save $50,000, and it's going to do everything the Escalade does. I mean, it's got the same motor and the same suspension. I mean, it's, you know what, you're going to lose a sale. Yeah. Because you don't know, why does that person want an Escalade?
That's what they want.
Maybe his softball coach or something drove an Escalade and was the nicest guy in the world and gave money out. And he says, someday I'm going to be like him. I'm going to drive an Escalade or whatever it is. You don't know why they want an Escalade. That's your job as an advisor on the money side and insurance. People saying, I think why so many advisors struggle with long-term care placement is because they don't have it. They don't believe it. And now people always ask me, how much of your business is referrals? It's less than 5%. I mean, it was maybe 1% initially. Now we're maybe up to 5% because I do have some financial advisors that now trust me. They've seen me work with their clients. They understand it. But as a general rule, we're looking at, saying, okay, I think you should go get long-term care insurance. And then the client looks at their advisor and say, okay, what kind do you have? Which company did you go with? Well, I'm just self-insuring. Yeah, so they can't refer out. They can't get all excited about it, right? You can't.
Yeah, it's interesting a lot of times too, because I think just this whole listening aspect of really listening to the signals and the signs that clients are talking to us about, and we're seeing this. They are more concerned about the risk of this than ever, and I think they are expressing to the extent that they know how a concern. But is it being heard? I mean, are they really being heard? And then is true action being taken? And your validation, the fact that they're not being heard. They're having some concern. They're expressing some concern. They're having conversation, albeit probably very, very superficial and very minimalistic. But it's not until they come across somebody like you where we're really diving into this. We're
right.
really unpacking this, and we're talking you through this, providing it the level of respect and process that it really deserves.
Yeah.
And then they come to the point where it's, okay, we need to take some action. And only at that point,
Yeah.
And
it's frustrating. And I think that, and I'll just, in full disclosure, I let my securities license go. And I eventually let go of my mortgage license, which was tough. I had that license for 20 plus years, and I finally let that go. And I truly just put both feet in the long-term care pool and said, I'm going to study this. And even if I run into a life insurance case that I fully believe in the right positioning of whole life insurance and so many things, key man insurance, all those things, but I'm not the expert at it.
you're not the guy.
So what I do is I bring in a colleague and I call him and I'm like, you're my life. That's all he does. And he's top notch at it. And I think that's the mistake so many of us want to do is the real estate salesperson that's the log home specialty that does really, really, and you're like, well, how many log homes are there? How can that person just make a living on it? It's because they're the specialist at it.
Yeah.
And they know ins and outs and the bolts, and people start coming to them. And it doesn't mean they can't sell a condo, but it's not what their specialty is versus the person that will, I can sell anything. I can do anything. And it's very hard to admit that. It's hard to stand in the mirror and admit that I can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
And we're trained to do that. Going back to that mutual training experience, they wanted us to be everything to everybody.
Right. Yeah. Seek out relationships.
Yeah. Every elevator ride was a potential sell, right? I just didn't get that. I really struggled with that. And I think, become really, really focused on something. And then when we're ready to move on to a different arena, bring in that person.
Yeah.
Bring that in and help them with the marketing and building a business and doing all those things. That's important.
All right, so I'm going to shift gears one more time, and then we'll
Sure.
close up. So you're Monday through Friday, we're hard charging, right? This is a tough business.
Absolutely.
We are exhausted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you sharpen the saw? What do you do to clear your mind, relieve stress, find balance in your life? And it's not an easy thing.
It's not. And my family paid quite a bit of a price early on because I was working Saturdays as well, live radio shows, and then my classes. I always do one on Saturday, and I still do one on Saturday a month. But right now, now that I record my shows, I can take that deep breath Friday afternoon, and I go home. We live on acreage. We have 5 acres up there in East Redmond, Washington, and I just love to be outside. I spend a lot of time out. We have a garden. We just spend time doing things like that. The weekend is the family time. Wherever we go. Now, COVID really changed things. We used to just go skiing every weekend in the winter, and then that got kind of cooled a little bit. We skied a few times, but as a general rule, it's for me, try to always exercise, get out, do something, and turn off work, which is hard to do. But a lot of times I'll find things when I put my cell phone in, I just let people know. They'll maybe text me, or if I know I'm expecting something, I'll stay on top of that. But a lot of times I'll put my phone away and I don't even pull that thing out until Monday morning, and which I find it very relieving. Not worrying about the emails coming in on the weekend or something like that.
So hard to do, but I'm working on that.
Yeah.
We really are. Just putting it away, disconnecting, and
Yeah.
because it's such a distraction.
Yeah. And again, but I'm not steadfast. I know I was at one of these leaders events, and it was like I was a greenhorn, and I was just laughing because this lady's like, oh, I can't even turn on my email. When I come to these, I just have to just completely escape it. And I'm like, well, I submitted 3 applications while I was here yesterday, right? Because I need to. I need to make it.
Yeah.
But now it's like part of that too. It's relieve some stress too. Is those baby steps is bringing in quality people. So if I got Madeline, my case manager's been with me from the start, and then I brought in Kristen, and she's our client coordinator collecting that data. So it's taking some of the pressure off of me. So I don't feel guilty now about leaving the office, and I can go enjoy that time. And yeah, my sweet spot is if I can move, I'll go for a mountain bike ride. I just bought a new full suspension mountain bike last year. I should have done that 20 years ago, because it's such a difference.
Being out in the open and just clearing your mind.
Being out, going hiking, spending time with the family. COVID was really, really hard on my mother-in-law's 84, and just having her come over and, be grandma to the kids. But she was in an assisted living facility, which was on lockdown.
Yep. No in and out.
Oh, that was harsh. That was really hard. And so we're getting back to that now and bringing some normal things in there. And I think that, I'm not a firm believer that I got this book at Christmas, and they're talking about for people that are hard chargers, type A, that it's that work-life balance, that it's really it's a life balance. It's not either or, right? I can't work, or I can only work if I'm this. I can't play and work at the same time. It's like, no, I think you have to be honest. But what I really try to do is I know that if I'm going to spend time with family, I want that phone away. I want to disconnect.
Yeah.
But if we're somewhere like we are down here for the weekend, and my daughter and my wife are going down to the pool, it's like, I might set up and check my emails for 30 minutes or an hour and correspond, but then shut that down and go down and be with them in that moment.
Yeah. Create windows and be disciplined to that, not just let it go on and on.
Yeah, but as far as walking away for 3 days, I don't feel guilty about that. So yeah, it's just the exercise, eating, not doing all those things, just having routines. I'm ADHD, just like my son was diagnosed, and I'm sitting in there listening to the doctor. I'm like, oh, great, that's me. Blame me for that, right? But he was talking about how you learn to do things to compensate by setting up routines and being consistent, and that's on everything for me too. It's like, the work, spending time with the family, doing all those things that are consistent, watching the movies on family movie night or whatever it is. It's important.
Absolutely. Quality time, quality family time, and that's great.
And being and feeling blessed for what you have when you have it. And I think this last year has taught us a lot of this. My daughter got her first job. My son's been working for a year now, and I said it's a blessing to have a job. You get to work.
Yep.
You don't have to work. You get to work. And so I carry that with me as well too, because sometimes it doesn't work out. We want to have, sometimes you maybe miss a time with the family that you thought you had planned because something came up, but hopefully you can make it up somewhere else later, and just feel positive about what you're doing. And I just love what I do so much that is honestly Monday mornings. I kind of get a kick getting up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds weird, but I don't
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I'm kind of, and Madeline says the same thing when she comes in the office. Like, you spend the time with the weekend. You do all that stuff with the family, you have fun, but Monday you're kind of excited because you're excited about that adventure that's going to come in and who you're going to get to help and who you're going to get to meet.
My hope, encouragement is people always find that. I mean, I've told people I never worked in this space. I've not worked a day in my life. Believe you me, before I found this, I was doing construction and physical construction. And I got a lot of benefit from that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I learned so much about life and the blessings of life and working really hard to earn things. But that was a job for me. I mean, right. I woke up, it was work. And when I came into this, it was like, I find true blessing in the opportunities that we have every day, and even welcoming the challenges that we face, and to learn from those challenges. And I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in this job. That doesn't mean that every day's roses and beautiful. Yeah. There's massive challenges and struggles, but that's part of the journey. You embrace that. That's a mindset.
Absolutely. And how lucky are you? And what was so powerful about Zig Ziglar for me, I'll never forget, it was 1986. I was my first year out of college. My aunt and uncle owned a Subaru dealership up in Alaska. So I went up there and they sold Honda motorcycles and power equipment. Said, you can't sell cars, but you can sell the motorcycles. I'm like, okay. Well, it turns out they sold a lot of three-wheelers up in Fairbanks, Alaska. That was like the family car in some of those little bush villages and stuff.
Really?
So
you really are a mountain man.
Yeah, Alaska, so I dabbled with that. But I remember stumbling, I don't know how, but I stumbled across this book on Zig Ziglar, and I started reading it. And I was just up there with my aunt and uncle, and I just got out my freshman year of college, and I was a construction management major. And Zig Ziglar really talked about the bounties of life, about sales as a profession of what you're really doing is helping people, right? And one of his famous quotes is, "You'll get everything in life if you help enough other people get everything they need or they want." And so I read that book and I thought, sales is really about helping people. That's kind of cool. And I got that. And then I went back to college and actually after I read that book, I wasn't supposed to sell cars. I ended up selling 9 Subarus the last 2 weeks that I was up there, because I told people, I said, well, I'm leaving on this date. I'm just up here for summer. And all these people came back in and bought cars, and that's more than anybody sold, like an average salesman sold in a year.
Yeah.
So went back to school, changed
Those
my major.
Subarus are probably still on the road.
They're still on the road, yeah. Absolutely, man. Those things are just great. And then I went back up there next summer, sold. But I really just got into that, taking a complex discussion, whether it's mortgages and people ask me about this. Long-term care happens to be my widget right now.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. What we're doing is we're taking something complex and breaking it down into usable information for that client and helping them understand something so they don't have to sit there and try to pick through this illustration and try to figure this out on their own. You're trying to explain and point this stuff out. And that's the warm feeling, because you've worked hard, you've studied, and now I can be usable in somebody else's life, and that's pretty powerful. And that's what we do. That's what we do for a living, and we help people. And so that's part of the. I just think this is a wonderful job. I really do.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things like, when are you going to retire? I got 4 more years or 5 more years. I don't see it that way. So.
That's great. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, no, it was my honor.
I was so glad that we were able to do this in person, you to come down, and this was much better.
I've done enough of it on the Zoom. It's so worth it. We're missing that. And so for the people out there, transitioning to the web is one thing, but we'll get back to some live stuff here soon, hopefully.
Find balance, right, in that.
Yeah. Mix it up both. And just now all of a sudden, why can't you do both?
Correct.
Why can't you?
And scale. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. My honor.